Get notifications and stay updated every time I post a challenge podcast by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you all and hope you enjoy. What's going on, everybody? So today I have a very special guest, and not to make him feel old or anything, but this is definitely a little surreal right now, because I remember watching Cutthroat when I was in third grade. But my guest today joining me is Abram Boise. Thanks for coming on today, Abram.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Mike. Lots of fun, and I don't take that as any kind of insult. I am getting older. That's just the reality of it. Yeah, 37 years old now. Yeah, so I'm getting up there. I'm married. I'm got a house, trying to have kids, business, all of that old people shit. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. But let's take it back a ways, though. I want to talk to you about your casting story. I know you probably talked about it a bit, but I want to hear it again. So.
Okay. It was pretty unspectacular. There had been a casting call in Missoula, Montana. My sister called me up. She's like, "Hey, you definitely got to show up for this." What was funny is that, like, just days before that happened, a friend who was in another studio or another college dorm, I was going to UM Western, Dillon, Montana, and she turned on the Real World, and I was just in the room. I was painting, and I was just like, "You can turn it on to anything other than that, but I can't stand that show. Don't fucking turn it on. Don't turn it on. That's just shit, you know." And so anyway, what's funny though is, like, I did know what Road Rules was, and Road Rules I thought was really friggin' cool. But anyway, when they do the casting, they cast for both shows. So anyway, MTV was up in Montana. They were doing what's called a cattle call. They bring in lots of 20-something people who show up. You sit down at a table. You do a quick round robin of some questions, and honestly, like, everybody was kind of talking over each other. And I didn't think I was really going to have any chance at all. I got some mosquitoes. I'm down in the Virgin Islands. I didn't think I was going to have a chance at all. Anyway, one of the guys, he ended up saying, like, when we go to leave the table, he's like, "Hey, I'd like you to stay. I'd like you to fill out this paperwork." So I go ahead and I stay. I fill out this paperwork, and they tell you, give you like a short answer, and I filled out the entire page. I wrote paragraphs. I drew pictures on the back of it, and I filled out this entire thing, and I give it to him. I'm like, whatever. It's probably not going to work out, but I gave it my best shot. And then I was actually in a college dorm visiting some friends, and I get a call, and, like, it's a 310 Los Angeles area code number, and I'm in Montana. And so I kind of like, well, whatever, what is it? And they like, "Hey, this is so-and-so with MTV. We'd like you to come back for an interview." And I was like, "Fuck you," hung up, because I thought it was one of my friends that was making fun of me, like, and pranking me, calling me from a different number. And, like, thank God they called me back, and they actually thought, like, "Hey, we're actually serious. We're actually this person." And then I went to the next interview, and it was just from there. There was more interviews and more interviews and more interviews in Los Angeles, with the Gestapo, just like interviewing you with lights on your face and a board of psychologists. And the next thing I knew, I was in Fiji, man, and that was it. Yeah. So
wow, that's definitely pretty different perspective on things, because a lot of times you see. In some cases, people are either lifelong fans of, like, the show, and they, like, go in with the intent. And from what you said, it basically sounds like that really, wasn't, what led you to do it.
No, not at all. It sounded cool. Road Rules sounded cool, and even the Real World. I mean, they were going to be in France. I was like, yeah, do I want to live in France? But even after filming the shows, I was never really, not to say anything against the people that worked on those shows and worked very hard, I'm sure, to be able to create those shows and those scenarios and things like that. But it was. I didn't even watch the shows I was on. I watched the first few, and I would see, like, some of the challenges, and then it just got to the point where I was just like, all right, whatever. I don't even want to watch the rest of it because there was just too much just backbiting and name calling and just people acting very poorly that it would like I couldn't stand to be in a room with a TV on with that kind of behavior. And so I haven't watched a lot of the shows, to be honest. But grateful for the experience, absolutely. Yeah. So,
Yep.
that's it.
But I want to dive into, more specifically what, it's kind of referred to as the greatest elimination of, that type of elimination, which was the balls in elimination with you and Brad. We saw that elimination kind of, come back on this season, and it got a lot of people talking, and everybody kind of, referred back to that elimination with you and Brad, which was kind of epic. You guys were in the inferno, you had the fire behind you, and you had that call out to Darrell afterwards. So I want to, hear, your perspective and thoughts on that elimination with Brad, because he's kind of known for pulling a rabbit out of the hat in eliminations, and you were able to get him on that one. So
Brad's a great dude. Really like Brad. It's funny, like my perspective now is going to be very different from my perspective then. At that time, like I was feeling good. I was, like it was a much higher competitive environment that I was in mentally. And if you ask me now, how I feel about things, and like I'd probably tell you like, well, my perspective now is that, oh, that was fun, and I might even diminish it in not in a negative way, but say, yeah, there's a couple guys fighting over a basketball for 10 minutes, and maybe that's not that big of a deal. But then on the other hand, I mean, like in the context of the shows and the eliminations that have happened, I could see that being a bigger deal, and I'm really grateful that people think that that's a really cool thing, and I forget there's fans of the show out there, people watching this, and it's always humbling and fun to hear like, hey, people think this was really just fucking rad and badass, and I'm like, that's so cool, man. I got to participate in that. But at the time, I was jacked and just like not jacked, like ooh, swole. I was just mentally jacked and in it, and I was just stoked, and I wanted it, and that was actually a big turning point for me, actually, because in sports, like I did a lot of team sports, and actually in all of the challenges I did, I was oftentimes on teams, and I never really got to do any of the individual challenges, which was kind of a bummer for me because there was a lot of times, and sometimes like like in Cutthroat, I was the one that had to get taken care of. I had heat stroke, and I got carried, and I didn't anticipate that. But in a lot of scenarios that I was on, when I was on team situations, I was often in a position where I would have to kind of guide people and be like, okay, it's going to be okay. We're going to do it. You're going to make it there. And I mean, I was kind of a coach player a lot of times. I think so, that I felt that I was in that role a lot. But on that elimination, I kind of got to turn that off. And I started talking shit to Brad, which is something I would never do. I don't ever do it, but I did then. And thank God I won, because otherwise I'd look like a huge asshole for talking shit. But I'm super grateful for that one, and I'm stoked that they're bringing stuff like that back. And somebody was telling me about, like, I did an interview with like Derek, and they were saying like somebody almost got killed doing that, and that's not what I want to see or encourage. But I'm glad that people are getting after it, and they're in it to win it. So yeah.
yeah, definitely. But I want to shift into the island a little bit because, the islands, it's kind of, viewed as in a certain way because of maybe the format and, the living conditions. It was definitely different from, your usual challenge season. And a lot of people, struggled with, coping with the living conditions. But you seem like someone who, at least from like on surface and from the first, couple episodes, seemed like someone who could potentially, thrive in that environment. So,
Yeah.
how do you feel like, you and the island would have played out for you had, you kept it around the entire time?
I mean, like hypotheticals are tough, especially within sporting events. But what I can tell you is that like I've never showed up at any sporting event, no nothing, not any challenge, and I look at it, I'm like, I'm gonna lose today. Not once, not once. I mean, like, not out of arrogance or anything else. It's just like, okay, what's going on? Okay, this is gonna be challenging. I may not be able. I'm gonna have some. I may not be able to do this. This may not be my strong suits. What do I got to do to be able to win? How can I make this work? So that was where my head was always at. So as far as like how the island had played out, I certainly think that I would have done very well there. But like on any of the challenges, like on any given day, to be honest, like you've got such a wide variety of people that like there's probably a good chance that if you've just got the standard cast, out of 80% of the people there, I'm probably going to be okay. It's like because a lot of it is there was athletically based, and I mean there was things like that, but there's a lot of people that just aren't in that category. I think the challenges have changed since I was there, but in the time that I was there, they weren't really casting like these just like heavy hitting, just college athlete types. At the time, it was more they were casting people that just had really cool, genuine stories and human interest stories, and that's what made it involving was the actual content of the stories. Um, but that being said, everybody was miserable on the island, and it was my favorite one that I ever did. I loved it. I was really really that was the one that I was really bummed that I had to leave. Um, but I knew I was going to be leaving early before I showed up on that show. I had a full plate at home. I was building my home in Montana. This is right when like the whole 2008 housing crisis was going on. People's mortgages and like were in free fall. I was right at the point where I had to lock in my mortgage to transfer because I'd been building this house for years. I had to roll it over in a construction or a mortgage, and so I knew that I had to be home. I knew I was going to be leaving early, and I also had a lot of conflicts with some of the production crews because like as I started the shows, there was a lot more freedom and there was more like, hey, we were cast members and we were working with people, and then it devolved into this thing where, the crew or the producer that I was working with, I mean, not all the producers, but a couple, where they would like, tell me I was a retarded child, they had to babysit, and so I had some real conflict with individuals that would say those kinds of things to me. That's not somebody I'm going to work with. But the other people, the vast majority of the crews that I worked with were great cameramen, audio guys, cast handlers. I mean, everybody was great, but there was a couple people that really made it like went out of their way to make sure that they were being demeaning and belittling to the cast and making it difficult. And I don't think that that's. I mean, maybe they thought that was their role, their job, but those conflicts that had been happening with myself in some production, over the years, and just the kind of general direction that it was going, had led me to want to say, hey, you know what? I don't really want to work with you anymore. That being said, it was a great opportunity. I wanted the vacation. I'm so glad I went. I met Kahata on that show. Um, within the first within the first couple hours of us being on an island, it was on that beach. It was funny. Kahata and I, they said, "Oh, the treasure's out of that island." Kahata and I looked at each other like, "That island?" And they're like, "Yes." Like within an hour, Kahata and I had built a full-on raft, like with an outrigger like stabilizer, and we had paddles, and we've got three guys on that thing, and we're out paddling around in the surf, just out past like we could go miles on that thing, and like production's like, hey, everybody, you guys come back in. There's no real treasure out there. It's a TV show, like. So I guess what was funny about that is it like if you really dropped us on a beach in an island and you said, hey, you got to get to there, like Kahata and I were paddling out there within an hour of landing on the beach and nothing, no tools, no nothing. We're lashing this together with vines. We're shaping paddles like with sticks. It's like, and it was on. So I do think that because of those scenarios, and I also saw it as a dream to be living on the beach in Panama, whereas a lot of people just were already losing it in the first few days. I certainly think that that would have been an advantage for me in the long haul for that show. Yes.
Mhm. I agree. But staying on to the island, I want to talk about a story that Tyree kind of brought to my attention, which was something about you dressing up as a ninja. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so they were starving us on the beach is what they would do, and so I would and so like the way this is set up, there's this little stretch of beach and like in Panama, and like it was fairly remote. There was a couple houses further down the beach, but like they had said, hey, look, you go past this, we're gonna fine you money. You're on this show, you're a cast, it's your responsibility. Here's your boundaries and they had security and whatnot, to make sure that we weren't violating that. But they were starving us, and they would give us this big bag of bony, fatty fish, like that was from like a cat food factory or something. I don't know what they would give us that and a bag of rice, and we would have to boil water. Like you would boil water with salt water from the ocean to give the rice flavor, so that it had some salt in it. So it was bad, and so I decided like they had this on the beach. There was this big fence that they had built and constructed, and had palm trees and leaves and so that you couldn't see it, just looked like jungle. But because you're filming this entire TV show, you need lighting and power and crew and catering and all this and security. So on the other side of this big jungle wall they constructed is a catering tent. And we can smell them cooking on the other side of this, 20 yards away. You can smell cooking cheeseburgers and all sorts of shit. You're a week into it and you're like, I'm getting hungry, man. Like, this is like, and so I got, like, it was, the moon was out, not maybe a half moon, not a full moon, but it was still pretty bright out. And I show up in that kind of light. So I everything except for just my eyes, like even my eyes are just barely showing. I took a marker, like, and I managed to find, and I took some charcoal and I rubbed the charcoal around, on on my fingertips. Everything's blacked out, like the little lines on my sneakers blacked out, everything. And I remember it might have been Kenny. And one of my favorite memories is that they're like, "Where are you going, man?" Like, we're up in these tree forts, and these houses are on stilts, and you're a good, 8, 10 feet off the ground, but it's just beach outside. But like, Kenny's like, "Man, where are you going?" I was like, "I'm going to food, man." And then I don't know, I was just trying to fuck around with them. Instead of going out the door, I jumped out the window head first. And there's this thing you can do where if you jump head first and you land with your arms, you can roll out of it, and it takes away a little bit of the impact. And I've done it before as pranks or jokes or just for fun, or we actually practice it, like as an actual way to tumble. But I literally jumped head first out of a window out like 10 feet off the ground, and then like I just rolled out of it, and then I'm in the shadows. And I remember hearing Kenny Santucci say, "Did he just fucking jump out of the window dressed like a ninja?" oh, oh God, I could die happy with that one. Oh, Jesus Christ. But anyway, so Tyree, so I go sneaking out. I get through, and it's just marsh, and like there's sticks, and there's lizards, and there's bugs, and like I'm kind of making my way through all this kind of like jungly thick shit to get around the side of the camp. And I get up in there, and actually, like I'm literally on my fingertips and on my tippy toes on my belly, just like fucking, doing the whole like Mission Impossible thing. And I'm gonna go for it, and a guy steps forward, and his boot just boom, just lands right in front of my face, and I'm just still barely in the shadows. But I've got to make it past this tent to the next tent, and it's one of the federale Panamanian police that they had hired as security for them, for all the crew, to make sure nobody's going to try and get in there and steal equipment or anything like that. But he's got a friggin' like AK-47 swinging down by his foot, and I'm right by his boot. He takes a piss in front of my face, turns around, walks away, and I see him go, and I'm like, all right, and I was off, and I rolled on over, got to the catering tent, got underneath the tent, and I'm literally laying under. They've got these picnic, like, Italian red and white, like checkered, like, table covers for the catering tent. That's laying over there, and there's some boxes of shit under the table. I'm laying under the table as the crew is like in this fully lit tent, and I'm like under the table, and I just like wait. I'm kind of watching their feet. Okay, nobody's over here, and then like I reach up and I grab some food off the table. I didn't know what I was grabbing. I grabbed a thing of eggs back here. I'm like, oh sweet, I got eggs. Stuff that in there. I'm like, okay. I got hot dogs, fucking sweet hot dogs. Ketchup. I'm like, I get this, like I stuff it all into my shirt, and then I like boogie back out of the tent. Just straight up, dressed like a ninja. On my way back, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take the easier way back. I'm gonna go through the main entrance instead of sneaking around because I don't see anybody around. And I go sneaking back from the main entrance, and all of a sudden, I see somebody, and I'm like, "What the fuck is that? Fuck, I'm busted. It's Tyree." And Tyree, I mean, he's a very dark man. He's he's he had stripped down, and he was only in his boxers, and he and I bumped into each other, like literally. I'm in a full ninja outfit to cover up, and he's stripped down to his boxers sneaking around. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you later, buddy. He's like, okay. We just take off. But that was a really great moment and a really fun story. But I would have tons of food, and so everybody was like starving, and like I would just start boiling eggs and hot dogs underneath. I would put rice on top of it, and then like people would come up and they'd be like, "Hey, what are you cooking, man? Oh my god, you got food?" I'd be like, "Yeah, you want to see some?" I open the lid up, and they would just see the rice, and they'd be like, "Oh, fuck, no more rice for me." And I'd be like, "Okay," and they'd walk away. And I got eggs and fucking hot dogs. I'd go back to the room. I got ketchup on these motherfuckers. It was great. I loved it. I was having a good time, and I really enjoyed not just for the sake of having the food, but that was definitely a real joy sneaking in there and doing those things. And dressed like a ninja for a little bit. So that was super fun.
Right. But I want to talk about Cutthroat, more specifically, the final here. What kind of it's okay. What kind of happened, to you in that final that took you out, and how do you feel like, you guys would have done had you and Sarah maybe, been able to do the whole thing? Because most of the season, you guys were pretty much the team to beat.
Yeah, we actually did. Everybody expected us to do really poorly, and then we kept doing better. And everybody was always making excuses of why we did well. They're like, "Oh, it was luck. It was luck. It was this. It was that." Like, maybe we're just not that bad. Maybe you're just not as great as you think you are, and everything. But anyway, I really enjoyed that. But I remember on that one, I think it was heat stroke. I've never had that in my life. But I do remember like leading up to that, like I was literally like, I was trying to be a hero a little bit. Like I remember there was like, we had these tires and we had to do it. And like, I thought we were going too slow. And I'm like, we gotta go, catch up because the other team was ahead of us. And I start rolling the tire I was doing it by myself for a little while. And I kind of had, some of my teammates with me that were trying to keep up. And I think I just overheated then, and I just didn't get back down to temperature. And then we kept going, and it continued to get worse until finally, like I was done. And actually, excuse me, it's not COVID. Oh God, I just actually said cough. But I remember there's a guy that we worked with for years on the shows. I think his name is Chris. I don't know, but I've trusted my life to this man for years. I always knew him as Crash was his name, and he's done stunt work in Los Angeles for bigger films for years, and he was like I looked to him for my safety, for my life, for all of the shows. Like I'd really known this guy for a long time, and I remember when he looked at me and like he was asking me like, "Can you keep going?" I'm like, "Yeah, like I'm gonna be okay." And he's like, "Okay, all right, we're calling it." And I was just like, and I looked at him, I was like, "Okay, Crash is telling me I'm not okay." He's like, "Hey man, you're done, dude. Like you need to stop." Like and so I did. And like my team tried carrying me for a little bit, but like it was after my team had already tried to carry me for a while, try to let me cool down. That was a real interesting turning of tables, because you think you're this invisible person. People were talking about how, because I had carried my teammates before in the past, literally, and like people were like worried, like, oh, you're gonna have to carry this person, and the people that they didn't expect to do well were the ones that carried me, and that was just super powerful. And like I can't be bummed with that result. I really did my best. I mean it. Like I gave it everything I had, and I burnt and I overdid it and I overheated and I was done. And that was a big lesson. That was a really big reality check for me. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it made me a much stronger person in the long run. Learning from that. That being said, I think that we probably would have ended up doing about the same as we did. I don't think that the outcome would have been that much different. I think our team ended up, I don't know, were we dead last?
No, you guys got second. I think it was.
I think we got second.
Yeah.
I honestly, I think I think even if I had been in top shape or not top shape, if I hadn't overheated and like fucking gone to the goddamn hospital, or even Sarah going to the hospital, honestly, I think we still would have gotten second. They had a big lead on us. I think it was it Brad Dunbar
Tyler.
and Tyler? That's right, Tyler. Dude, Tyler's a hoss, by the way. Tyler's great. Like, I don't. I was really happy to see Tyler do well on that show, because I think that whole show, there was a lot of like people underestimating people and people proving that they're actually way better than these bullshit estimates that you're making at face at not even at face value, but really like diminishing people before you've given them a shot. And so I think that was a really cool overall. Like even me, I was overestimated and I didn't deliver, man. And that's so cool. And Tyler was underestimated. I think partly just being a gay man, they're like, oh, he's just a sissy or something like that. And he fucking stomped it. So, and I don't mean to put words in people's mouths, or I'm not trying to call Tyler any names. I'm just saying, like, there might be this perception of people that is based on wrong information, and I was really happy to see those misconceptions proved wrong. Even in the case of me, I was one of those examples. So I still think we would have been about second based off of what did happen and what I did see and how far of a lead they had on us in the first 20 minutes. Like they were kicking our ass, man. Like they were getting after it, and we just weren't in that space as a team even before. Like I wasn't going slow leading up to overheating and getting sunstroke or heat stroke. I was going as hard as I possibly could, and we were still way behind. And so I still think it would be likely that based on the information that I do have and the events that did happen, I think that would still be a likely outcome. Yes.
Yeah, because if you evaluate that final in terms of like the team's strengths, there was a lot of like, heavy lifting going on in that. And you got like three horses of men on their team, and you guys were comprised of, mostly, females. And then, I mean, no disrespect to Luke, but obviously he's not like the biggest guy in the world. So it's like,
Yeah.
compared
Luke was on my team, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Luke. God. Luke. I haven't heard that name in fucking a long time, man. Wow. Yeah. Who else was on my team, Mike?
Sarah, Laurel.
Sarah, uh, uh, what's her name? Tall girl.
Laurel.
Laurel, Luke, and me.
Yeah, and I think
That's right, you? Yeah. Was Derek still there with us?
Derek had just gotten eliminated by Tyler in that last elimination. That was the one where they had the pole and he pushed the person into the barrel.
Dang. Yeah, now I remember that. I mean, like, it's not that I don't remember, like, it's just like a lot of like the different challenges and things we did kind of blur together. And sometimes I think, was that in South Africa? Was that in Mexico? Or was it in Fiji? So I mean, like some of them blur together, and it's not being disrespectful to people. It's just like, hey, that was a while ago. And also, to be perfectly honest, I ended up in the hospital pretty dazed for a while. And, like finally when I came to, I felt like a different person. So, I mean, like that was a pretty heavy, like physical day for me as well. So, like that was a little bit intense. But anyway, but yeah. Uh, and also, to the credit of Dunbar, Brad, and the other D, the girl, the blonde girl, Paula, Paula, Paula. She was there. And Tyler, they trained really hard for long distance running the entire time we were there. They did a good job. In to their credit, they worked for it, they practiced for it, and then they performed well. So like, you can't detract from that and say, oh, it would happen to be one thing. It's like they worked for it. They worked hard, and they really pushed themselves, and they trained on a regular basis while we were there. So that's credit where credit's due. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Staying on the topic of Cutthroat, really fast, I want to ask you to kind of debunk the whole rumors of the house being haunted. Can you shed any
Yeah,
light?
there was no haunting. I think we dressed up with some makeup and tried scaring some people a few times, but like that was a little shit. I mean, it was just a big old empty house. If you could call it a house, it was like remnants from the feudalistic era. It had a great yard, but no, it wasn't haunted. Like the Cutthroat, that was an off different one because the Czech Republic was such an odd location, and we were kind of in a town, but we weren't allowed to leave and go. Like it was very rural. But I'm really glad we got to go because we got to see Hadrian's Castle in Prague, and I really appreciated some of the masonry that went into the cathedrals there. So that was really cool, and Prague's got a lot of cool history because it was one of the towns that wasn't bombed into oblivion in World War II, because they capitulated to the Nazis. In order to be able to save the city, it actually preserved a lot of the city, and so there's still a lot you can see in Prague that you can't see in a lot of other places in Europe. Yeah. So, but no haunting, no haunting.
That's what I kind of figured. So,
Yeah.
wanted to get your perspective since it seemed like you might, know more about it than most would probably.
Well, like what's funny is like, look, it's like if you're gonna ask somebody, like, but that's coming from somebody who thinks that like nothing is haunted. Okay, like that's it. Like that's the end of it. Like you're creeped out by this. That being said, we've got our studio in Montana and an old school. That fucking building is scary as shit at night. Like it scares the crap out of me. Like I fucking am freaked out. Like I go to work there, and I swear to God, it's like I haven't even watched the It clown movies, but I feel like he's fucking in there every time I go into that damn building at night. So yeah, you can get some vibes, but no, it was just a creepy old house. Yeah.
Hmm. So now I want to talk a little bit about you and Johnny Bananas' dynamic because it seems like you guys on the last couple shows you've done kind of seemed on opposite sides of the fence or to maybe butt heads a little bit. And an interesting note that I want to point out before you answer my question, Abe, and a lot of people pointed this out as well. Actually, on the island when it was you and Johnny when they were voting off, you pretty much told everybody there to, vote you off, and yet
Yeah,
still the votes really came down to the wire. So had you not
yeah.
said that, Johnny more than likely gets, voted off in the island, and that changes the whole scope of how, the challenge, history is written. Because if that was Johnny's first win, and
Yeah.
so
You know, honestly, I think that number one, um, I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind when people talk about Johnny is our current president administration. Um, that's who I think. I think that there's dramatic correlations between the two. Uh, and in my opinion, those are and I have friends that are like support different. I'm not here to talk about politics or what your policies are, party bipartisan, whatever. They're very negative associations. I'm not somebody that really hates someone, but I can't stand John. And that's not true. I joke with him and I have a relationship with him. For the first 4 years, I couldn't stand him, and then he kind of started to grow on me after about 4 years. But still, I would say that even though I left and I had to ask people to leave it on the challenge, I honestly think if it wasn't John, it would be the same persona would have arisen and taken that role in that light. And I think that there's a big part of the shows. I've seen other individuals that they start out the show. Like when I first did like some of the shows, like when I was down in Acapulco, Mexico, I would sit down and I would listen to some of these people talk, and I just wanted to listen. They were genuinely the coolest fucking human stories I'd ever heard. And slowly, I think something that happened is it kind of digressed. And I think that there was a lot of people that were really big fans of the show that were applying and casting, kind of like we were talking about in like the casting process. And like they thought that they needed to fulfill a role. Like they needed to be, oh, I'm going to be the next Johnny. I'm going to be the next Puck. I'm going to be the next this. And that's not really what the shows weren't about that when it started. The shows were about showing genuine human interest from a really broad background that would bring together and create, conflict and drama between these individuals, and we would be able to get to watch the whole thing unfold. One of the first, like Pedro on the first Real World, it was a gay man that died of AIDS, which was a huge fucking deal at the time. To have that public, we didn't like. There wasn't the same, even though we're still at a point and a crossroads, especially right now in our country, which is obvious, with even just the Supreme Court's recent decision showing that we still have a long way. Like we're just now getting to that point where you have, equal protections in the law for LGBTQ like community members. And way back in the day, decades ago, literally, there was a gay man on television that died of AIDS. That was a big deal. And so bringing that together. But what's happened, I think, is there's been this devolving of characters and this rewarding of bad behavior where people think it's good television to get in fights. Like I've seen people put on full makeup and then go and start talking shit to somebody just so they can try and create something for the cameras to film, which is not something that I like or that I condone. Um, I'm not condemning it, but I certainly don't condone it. It's like people are allowed to do their own decisions and what works for them, and I understand the scope of the show. What I'm getting at is I think that John and the persona that he's built of being this hated villain on the TV shows is like somebody would have filled that role. Like the shows are geared towards trying, like the shows were actively trying to make that pure drop of just evil that has not evil, but a lack of moral guidance, a lack of ethics, a lack of principles, a lack of values. The shows are geared towards specifically putting people into positions where they will abandon all ethics, values, morality, or anything that would exist in the outside world and maybe that's what makes it this juicy kind of. I mean, I watch violent films, so I'm probably, just as culpable as anyone else for like saying like, hey, I'd like to see this violence and this gratuitous sex. Is that evil? Maybe not, but I think that's what makes the shows what they are. I don't know, but I can tell you that I think that those shows are specifically geared towards creating these kinds of conflicts and these kinds of dramas that and encouraging people with very real rewards, both face time on camera and with money, for treating other people badly and acting without values. So I don't think that Johnny's unique in becoming just this one individual. It's like he just was the one that I would use the word succumbed, but I doubt he would use the same language. But I think he's just that one. It was what the shows wanted to create, and they created it with him, and he was complicit in creating that kind of a program. But one thing I've told people consistently, and it was my view, I can't control people, and it's what they're, and it's been successful for them, cool, and they're happy, great. What I've told people though is that you couldn't pay me any amount of money in the world to be John for one fucking day, man. Like if I had to walk down the street, I don't know how I'd fucking live with myself, man. Like, yeah, like, I mean, I'm an asshole, sure, but Jesus, like took it to the next fucking level, man. Fuck, and so anyway, I think that the shows and John are a good marriage, kind of like Lady Macbeth and Macbeth. they're who are go watch Macbeth. They're fucking foul people, and yeah. So there you go. But that being said, I learned to live with him. But I would never allow him in my real life, because if you're gonna lie and cheat and steal on those shows, it means you're gonna fucking do it in real life. And so at least that's the way I feel about it. And so it was important for me to feel like I was acting in accordance with my ethics or values as often as possible, because I was being put in challenge situations. So I really appreciated being tested in those ways. I'm not saying I'm an angel, but I am saying it helped me to ratify my own personal ethical code and sense of value.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to ask you, since we just spoke about Johnny, him and Wes, who were at each other's throat for damn near over a decade, kind of came together.
Really?
Yeah, kind of came together this season and formed like a pact, and they were a two-man power trip, I'd call it. What are your thoughts on that? I know you only did like, what was it, one challenge with Wes, but
I did one challenge with Wes, and I met him for, I don't know, less than a week. And it got to the point where if he would walk into the room, I would stop what I was doing and I would just fucking walk out of the room. I didn't want to be around it. Like, he kept talking about, it was like listening to an infomercial that I wanted to fucking turn off. He kept talking about being an entrepreneur and his businesses and how successful he was. And I just was like, get the fuck away from me, man. Just fuck off. Take your ray of self-help sunshine and shove it up your fucking ass. Yeah, I had a very palpable dislike. I thought he was invasive, and so the fact that him and Johnny had problems with each other kind of warms my heart. I hope they fucking ripped each other apart. I mean, I've got my own mean streak, and I'm still trying to work with that, and even a temper, and like I've learned to be better with that, and learning how to work better with that, and coming up with better solutions. But in the end, yeah, I'd like to see Johnny and Wes both, rip each other apart and burn. Like that would actually, I don't care. Don't care. No, just thought about it. I'm good.
Yep.
Don't care. So I'm probably the wrong guy to ask as far as like, and honestly, I don't have enough input or reference to be able to fairly comment on anything about Wes's situation.
Hmm. So now I kind of want to hear your perspective on how the challenge has evolved in your opinion, and your thoughts kind of with them branching into a large casting pool consisting of Big Brother and UK people.
I didn't know they were casting Big Brother weekend people.
Wow.
I didn't even know. I didn't even know. Like that's where I'm at. And again, I mean, I'm not trying to like diminish the shows. Although I think that they are shit, and I don't want to insult fans of the show. How about that? I'm super grateful for the show, and I don't want to insult people by telling them like, "Hey, what you're watching is trash." But I mean, like, I watch some trash too. Like, hey, cool, man. But it's just not my bag. So, and after doing the shows, I have a greater dislike for the shows. Like, I can't watch them because sometimes like it is personal and like my blood boils. I'm like, I can't listen to that person talk to me. I'll get upset, I get angry. So like that's part of it too, is that like I have a personal connection that might otherwise not be there. So anyway, as far as the casting goes, I don't know what they're doing now. What I can tell you is when I did work with them, and I worked with them for a good 15 years, which was longer than I expected. um, I saw a dramatic change, uh, which in my opinion was for the worse. Um, I didn't like the way they were casting. I didn't like who they were casting, and it seemed like they were just trying to make a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it eventually got diluted. I also think that doing something like Road Rules was fucking awesome. I think Road Rules was so cool, and they ditched that, and they ended up like Road Rules basically became the challenge. And I thought that was really cool, and there was some really amazing people that I met on those shows when they were casting just really interesting characters. And I can tell you that, in my opinion, in the time that I was working with them, the people became less interesting, and I didn't want to talk with them more. We're going on 47 minutes, and I got to pack up here in just a minute. But let's I don't mean to cut you short. You've been so great, and you followed up. I thank you for being patient with me, Mike. But let's do a wrap up and wind it down here.
Yeah, we were getting towards the end anyway, so I was just gonna basically kind of briefly ask you what your thoughts were on the whole Mark Long OG challenge that he kind of speaked into
I don't
existence.
know what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing. He just sent me a message the other day. He's like, "Hey man, are you interested in doing like a fun OG challenge thing?" And I immediately sent like, just Mark, anything you're doing, I want to support. Like, just hands down. Mark is just one of those guys you want to hang out with. He's fucking built like a fucking Greek god. He's like 6'4" and like 0% body fat. I think he's 3,000 years old, and he still looks better than anybody else. Oh God! But he like I would like to be Mark Long when I grow up. How about that? He's a great dude.